In the autumn of 1885, in a small Colorado town where the mountains touched the sky, there lived a woman whom society had already written off. Martha Brennan was 28, unmarried, and carried herself through a world that measured a woman's worth by the narrowness of her waist. This is her story, not one of transformation to meet the world's expectations, but of finding someone who saw her true worth from the very beginning. It's a tale I've gathered from old letters and diary entries, pieced together like a quilt from fragments of truth. What happened in that town hall meeting changed not just two lives, but reminded an entire community that love sees with different eyes than judgment does. The gavel came down hard enough to make the water glass jump on Judge Whitman's desk. The Brennan property will be seized in 3 days unless the debt is paid in full. His voice carried over Martha's head, where she sat in the back row, her needle moving steadily through the torn hymnal cover she was mending. $240, cash. Martha didn't look up. She'd learned years ago that becoming invisible was easier when your hands were occupied. The thread whispered through fabric while her father's voice cracked somewhere near the front of the room. "Please, Judge Whitman, the harvest failed?" "Yes, Samuel, we know." The banker, Mr. Hartley, stood up from his seat. "As it failed last year and the year before." The sound of boots on warped floorboards made everyone turn. Martha's needle paused mid-stitch. A man stood in the doorway, dust still settling around his worn leather duster. He was tall, rough-hewn, with hands that looked like they'd known hard labor, and a face the sun had marked as its own mountain man. Martha thought, the kind who came down twice a year for supplies and spoke to no one. This a public meeting. His voice was low, carried an education that didn't match his appearance. Judge Whitman frowned. "It is. Mr. Kincaid, Josiah Kincaid." He walked forward, each step deliberate. "I'll take the debt." The room went silent. Even Martha looked up now. Mr. Hartley laughed nervously. "That's very generous, Mr. Kincaid, but you don't even know the Brennans." "I know enough." Josiah's eyes put up at the room, paused on Martha for a heartbeat, then returned to the judge. "I'll take the debt and the eldest daughter." Martha's needle drove deep into her thumb. She didn't flinch, didn't cry out, just watched the blood bead up while the room exploded in whispers. "Now, see here." Her father started to rise, but her mother's hand on his arm stopped him. Judge Whitman's gavel came down again. "Order, Mr. Kincaid. Are you proposing marriage?" "I'm proposing a solution." Josiah pulled a leather purse from his coat, set it on the judge's desk. The coins inside made a heavy sound. "The debt's paid. The lady comes with me as my wife. Tuesday morning, 4 o'clock. Mrs. Henderson in the front row turned around to stare at Martha. Then Mrs. Mills, then everyone. Martha set down her mending, folded it precisely, and stood. The whispers grew louder. "Fat Martha," she heard someone say. "Why would he?" She walked forward, her gray dress rustling against the benches. Her mother was crying silently. Her father's face had gone the color of ash. Her 2 younger sisters sat frozen, torn between relief and horror. When she reached the front, Martha looked up at Josiah Kincaid. This close, she could see his eyes were gray as winter sky, and there was something in them she couldn't read. Not pity, not charity, something else. "Do I have a say in this?" she asked. "You do." He studied her face. "I need a wife who can manage a household, work hard, read and write. I'm told you can do all 3. "And if I refuse?" He glanced at her family, then back to her. "Then your family loses their home, and I go back up the mountain alone." It wasn't really a choice. They both knew it, but he'd given her the dignity of asking. Martha turned to Judge Whitman. "I'll need the marriage papers drawn up proper." "Martha." "No." Her mother started. "It's done, Mama." Martha kept her voice steady, though her hands trembled. "Tuesday morning, 4 o'clock." Josiah nodded once, picked up his purse from the desk lighter now, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he paused. "Bring warm clothes," he said without turning around. "Mountain nights are cold." Then he was gone, leaving Martha standing in front of the entire town, her thumb still bleeding, wondering what kind of man paid $240 for a wife he'd never met, and why he'd looked at her like he was the one being saved. The judge cleared his throat. "Well, that's settled then. Next order of business." Martha walked back to her seat, picked up her mending, and continued stitching. The thread was red now, stained with her blood, but she kept sewing. The women around her whispered and pointed. The men shook their heads. She didn't care. In 3 days, she'd be gone from here, married to a stranger who lived somewhere in the mountains, a man who wore work clothes but spoke like he'd read books, who had enough money to save her family but chose to live apart from society. What did he want with her? Not beauty. Martha had no illusions about that. Not connections. Her family was nobody. Not even companionship, from the sound of it. Just someone who could work. The needle moved through fabric, steady as breathing, whatever Josiah Kincaid wanted. It couldn't be worse than dying slowly in this town, watching her sisters take her place on the shelf, growing old in back rows while life happened to other people. Tuesday morning, 4 o'clock, she'd be ready. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. The scissors bit through 20-year-old satin with a sound like tearing paper. Martha's mother stood in the doorway, fingers pressed to her mouth. "That was my wedding dress." "It still is." Martha laid the cut panel on the kitchen table, smoothed it flat. The morning light through the window showed every water stain, every place the fabric had yellowed. "Just bigger now." The dress hung from the doorframe on a bent nail, arms spread wide like a scarecrow. The bodice would never close across Martha's chest. She'd tried twice already, pins scattered on the floor to prove it. The waist sat where her ribs were. She picked up the calico she'd bought last spring for curtains that never got made. Blue flowers on cream, it would have to do. "Martha." Her mother moved closer, touched the ruined satin. "You don't have to." "Tuesday, 4 o'clock. Martha positioned the calico against the satin, marked the cutting line with chalk. "Unless you have $240 hidden somewhere." Her mother's hand dropped. Martha cut. The scissors were dull. Everything in this house was dull. Worn, used up, but they did the job. She'd add panels at the sides, gussets under the arms, make something that fit out of something that didn't. Footsteps on the porch. Heavy boots. Both women froze. 3 knocks. Solid. Measured. Martha set down the scissors, wiped her hands on her apron. Through the front window, she could see the crown of a dusty hat. Josiah Kincaid. 2 days early. Her mother grabbed her wrist. "Don't answer it. He owns our house, Mama." Martha pulled free, walked to the door. The floorboard by the threshold creaked. It always had. She turned the handle. Josiah stood there, hat in his hands. In daylight, without the drama of the courthouse, he looked older, lines around his eyes, gray threading through dark hair that needed cutting. His coat was the same worn duster, but underneath she glimpsed a clean shirt, pressed. "Miss Brennan, Mr. Kincaid." His eyes moved past her to the wedding dress hanging like a ghost, the cut fabric on the table, her mother standing guard over it all. "You'll need more than one dress." He reached into his coat, pulled out a leather purse. Not the same one from yesterday. This one was smaller, newer. For what you need. Martha stared at the purse. I don't take charity. It's not charity. A ranch wife needs proper clothes. Ranch. So that's where she was going, up the mountain to some rough cabin, cooking for ranch hands, mending their clothes, scrubbing their dishes. She took the purse. It was heavier than expected. Will there be others? She asked. At the ranch? A few hands, quiet folks. He put his hat back on, touched the brim. Tuesday, 4 o'clock. He turned to leave, then stopped. Can you handle horses? Martha thought of the old mare they'd sold last winter to buy flour. Yes. Good. Bring whatever books you have. Books. She watched him walk down the path, his stride long and certain. What kind of ranch hand cared about books? The purse weighed warm in her hand. She opened it. Gold coins. Not silver, gold. 4 o'clock. The town slept except for yellow squares of lamplight in windows where curtains hadn't been drawn. Martha stood on her parents' porch, carpetbag at her feet, watching the road. The wagon materialized from the darkness, wheels crunching frost. 2 horses, matched bays. Josiah held the reins loose in his hands, pulled up at the gate. He climbed down, took her bag first, set it in the wagon bed next to a tarp-covered load. Then he turned to her, held out his hand. Martha had expected him to let her climb up herself. She took his hand, calloused, warm, and stepped up. The bench seat had a blanket folded on it. She arranged her skirts while he walked around to his side. Ready? He didn't look at her, just at the road ahead. Yes. The horses moved forward. Behind them, her mother's silhouette appeared in the doorway, then vanished. Her sister's window stayed dark. They passed the Hendersons' house. Mrs. Henderson stood at her parlor window, nightdress visible, watching. Then the Millers. Mr. Miller on his porch with a pipe, the bowl glowing red. More windows, more faces. At the corner of Main Street, 3 men stood outside the saloon even though it was closed. One of them, Tom Bradley. She recognized the slouch, cupped his hands around his mouth. Hey, Kincaid, how much does she eat? Laughter. Another voice, better stock up on feed. Martha kept her eyes forward. The blanket under her was wool, good wool. She pressed her palm flat against it. Josiah pulled the horses to a stop. Martha's breath caught. He was going to answer them. Make it worse. Make her sit here while they... He reached behind the seat, pulled out something dark, an India rubber raincoat. He held it out to her. Might rain later? She took it. The men were still calling things. Josiah clicked his tongue at the horses, and they moved on. He never looked at the men, never acknowledged them at all. The town fell away. Houses became scattered, then sparse, then gone. The road started climbing. Pine trees closed in on both sides, their smell sharp in the cold air. The sky lightened from black to gray to pale pink along the mountain edges. Coffee. Josiah reached under the seat, pulled out a flask. I don't... Martha started to refuse, then smelled it. Real coffee, not chicory, not burnt grain. Coffee. Yes. He handed it over, still warm. She sipped, tasted something else, cinnamon. The flask was silver, dented but clean, with initials she couldn't make out in the dim light. Your parents. His voice made her jump. They'd been riding in silence for an hour. They didn't come out. They said goodbye last night. All of them. Martha thought of her sisters, pretending to sleep, of her father, signing papers with shaking hands. Yes. The road curved, started switching back. The wagon tilted. Martha grabbed the bench edge. Below, through gaps in the trees, she could see the town. Tiny boxes, threads of smoke from chimneys, the church steeple like a needle. First time up the mountain, First time anywhere. The words came out before she could stop them. He made a sound that might have been a laugh. Books don't count. She looked at him sideways. His profile against the brightening sky was all angles, nose, jaw, cheekbone. You mentioned books before. Why, ranch gets lonely. Books help. Do you? She stopped. It wasn't her place to ask. Do I read? He glanced at her, something like amusement in his eyes. When I can't. The sun crested the peaks, throwing long shadows. The horse's breath steamed. Martha's fingers were numb around the flask. What kind? She had to know, had to understand this man who dressed rough but spoke careful, who had coffee with cinnamon, who thought about books. Whatever I can find. Just finished Melville. Moby Dick. Typee. Martha nearly dropped the flask. You've read Typee twice. He held out his hand for the flask, took a sip, handed it back. Everything we had, the lending library in town, when they'd let me. She thought of Mrs. Carthage, the librarian, always watching like Martha might steal the books, eat them maybe. Dickens, some Austen, the Farmer's Almanac. The almanac's good reading. She couldn't tell if he was mocking her. The road narrowed, rock face on one side, drop on the other. The wagon wheels rode the edge. Martha pressed back against the seat. Far below, a creek glinted like a snake. Her town was gone now, hidden behind ridges. Stop here for noon meal. Josiah pointed ahead to where the road widened slightly. A flat spot, boulder to tie the horses. He helped her down again, that same steady grip. While he tended the horses, Martha walked to the edge, looked out at the valley spread below, miles and miles of nothing but forest and rock and skied hungry. She turned. He had a basket open on the tailgate, not a crate or a sack, a proper basket with a lid, inside cold biscuits, yes, but also a jar of honey, not the dark wild kind, but clear amber, dried apples, cheese wrapped in cloth, 2 hard-boiled eggs. Martha picked up a biscuit, fresh made, maybe yesterday. It flaked apart in her fingers. The honey was clover honey, expensive. The cheese had herbs in it. Your cook, she said carefully. They make good biscuits. He was watching the horses drink from the stream. No cook. Then who? I do what needs doing. She studied his back, the set of his shoulders under the worn coat. A man who could pay gold coins for a wife but made his own biscuits, who read Melville but dressed like a saddle tramp, who owned a ranch but came alone to fetch his bride. Mr. Kincaid, her voice sounded thin in all that space. What kind of ranch do you have? He turned then, and there was something in his face she couldn't read. Not quite a smile, not quite a warning. You'll see soon enough. The sun was climbing. The road ahead disappeared around another bend, climbing higher into mountains she'd only ever seen from below. And somewhere up there, behind those peaks, was a ranch run by a man who made no sense at all. Josiah packed the basket, helped her back onto the wagon. As they rounded the next curve, Martha looked back one last time. The valley where she'd spent 28 years was already invisible, swallowed by the mountain's shoulder. How much further, she asked. By dark, if the weather holds. She pulled the India rubber coat closer, though it wasn't raining yet. The horses climbed steady, sure-footed. The wagon creaked its rhythm, and beside her, Josiah Kincaid held the reins like a man who knew exactly where he was going, even if Martha had no idea where that was. The road ahead split into 2 tracks. Josiah took the smaller one without hesitating. It led up, always up, toward a pass she could see in the distance, a notch between peaks like a door barely cracked open. That's where we're going. She pointed at the notch. Through there, then down the other side. Through there, to what she'd know by nightfall, he'd said. But the sun was only halfway up the sky, and already nothing made sense. Why did a man who could afford gold coins live so far from everything? And why did he need a wife now, today, so urgently that he'd claim her in front of the whole town? Martha gripped the bench as the wagon tilted again. The horse's hooves sent small rocks tumbling down the slope. And somewhere up ahead, through that narrow pass, answers waited, or more questions. The clouds were building behind the peaks, dark and heavy. Josiah glanced at them, then urged the horses faster. The pass narrowed until the wagon barely fit between rock walls. The horses' breathing echoed back, loud and labored. Martha's ears popped. The temperature dropped enough that her breath showed white. Then the walls fell away. Josiah stopped the wagon. Below them, the mountain opened into a valley Martha hadn't known could exist. Green pasture rolled down from the tree line, split by a creek that caught the late sun like a ribbon of copper. White fence posts marched along the meadow's edge, each one straight as a soldier, painted fresh enough to gleam. But the fences were nothing compared to what they surrounded. That's... Martha's voice died. A house rose from the valley floor, 3 stories of timber and stone, windows across its face, catching the light. She counted them, lost track, counted again. 20 windows, maybe more. A porch wrapped around 2 sides, pillars holding up the roof, a weather vane on top, copper horse spinning slow in the mountain wind. This wasn't a ranch house. Ranch houses had 2 rooms, maybe 3. Tar paper roofs, windows you could count on one hand. Your ranch. The words came out strangled. Yes. The wagon started down the switchback trail. Martha gripped the bench. Each turn brought the house closer, made it larger. Behind the main building, other structures spread out. Barn, stable, what looked like a bunkhouse. All of them proper built, not thrown together. All of them maintained. Smoke rose from 3 chimneys. Someone was burning apple wood. She could smell it even from here, sweet and clean. Mr. Kincaid. Her throat felt thick. You said you needed a wife to manage your household. I do. That... She gestured at the valley. The house, all of it. That's not a household. That's an estate. He glanced at her, something unreadable in his gray eyes. Does it matter? Yes, she wanted to say. Yes, because you stood in that courthouse in a worn duster and work boots and let everyone think you were nobody. You let me think I was marrying a mountain man who needed someone to cook beans and mend shirts. The trail leveled out. They passed through a gate wrought iron, the kind that cost more than her family's farm was worth. The road here was graded, graveled, maintained. 2 men came out of the barn, ranch hands by their dress. Though their clothes were cleaner than any ranch hand she'd ever seen, they stopped what they were doing, touched their hat brims. Mr. Kincaid? The older one said. Ma'am, ma'am, like she was already the lady of this place, like they'd been expecting her. The younger one came forward, took the horses' bridles. I'll see to them, sir. Sir, not boss, not Kincaid. Sir. Josiah climbed down, came around to help her, his hands at her waist, lifting her down like she weighed nothing. Her feet touched gravel that crunched expensive under her worn boots. The front door opened. A woman emerged. Chinese, elderly, wearing a black dress with white collar and cuffs, housekeeper's uniform. Martha had only seen them in catalog illustrations. Mr. Kincaid. The woman's voice was accented but clear. Welcome home. Mrs. Chen. He nodded toward Martha. My wife, Mrs. Kincaid. Wife, Mrs. Kincaid. The words hit Martha like cold water. It was real, legal. She was married to this man who wasn't what he'd seemed. Ma'am. Mrs. Chen bowed slightly. Your rooms are ready. Rooms, plural. Martha followed them inside, her eyes trying to take in everything at once. The entrance hall had a staircase that curved up to the second floor, banister polished until it gleamed. A hall tree stood by the door walnut, carved with vines and leaves. Her plain coat looked wrong, hanging next to Josiah's duster. "I'll show you the house." Josiah's voice was quiet. "Then you can rest before dinner." He led her through a doorway to the right. Parlor, no drawing room. Parlors had one settee and mismatched chairs. This had furniture that matched, upholstered in green velvet. A piano sat in the corner, lid closed, dust cover protecting the keys, paintings on the walls, real paintings in gold frames, not prints torn from magazines. "Do you play?" He'd noticed her looking at the piano. "No, my sisters did, a little." Through another door, dining room, a table that could seat 12. China cabinet with glass doors, dishes visible behind them blue and white, complete set, no chips or cracks. "We don't use this room much." His hand touched the back of a chair, pulled away. "Never had reason to." The kitchen was at the back. Modern stove, the kind that burned coal instead of wood. Sink with a pump right there, not outside. Shelves of preserved goods, each jar labeled in neat writing. Mrs. Chen does most of the cooking. He opened a door to show a pantry bigger than Martha's bedroom at home. "But the kitchen is yours if you want it." If she wanted it, like she had a choice, like any of this was about choosing. Back through the hall, up those curved stairs. The runner was Brussels carpet, pattern of roses and leaves. Her hand on the edge of the banister felt the wood's grain, smooth from years of other hands. Library. He opened a door on the second floor. Martha stopped breathing. Books, shelves floor to ceiling, everyone full. Leather bindings, cloth bindings, some so old the titles were worn off the spines. A desk sat by the window with a leather chair behind it, papers stacked neat. Inkwell and pens laid out ready. "How many?" Her voice came out whispered. 600, maybe more. I buy them when I can. 600 books. She'd never seen so many in one place except the town library, and that had been half this size. Her finger traced along the spines. Shakespeare, Byron. Even her hand stopped Mary Shelley, books that Mrs. Carthage had kept locked away from unmarried women. "They're yours to read." Josiah stood in the doorway, watching her. "All of them." She turned to look at it, really look. The rough clothes were the same, but now she saw what she'd missed. The way he stood straight, comfortable in this space. The way his hands rested quiet at his sides. No fidgeting, no awkwardness. The way he watched her, patient. Like he had all the time in the world. Why? The word came out harsh. Why the pretense? The worn clothes, the rough manner. Why let everyone think you were poor? He moved into the room, went to the window. The sun was almost down, painting the mountains orange and red. "My first wife." His voice was level, matter-of-fact. "Catherine, from Denver. Beautiful, educated, everything a man like me was supposed to want. Her father owed money, sir. She married me to save him, same as you married me to save yours." Martha waited. She hated it here, hated the isolation, the quiet, hated me. Eventually, tried to leave after 6 months, but winter had closed the passes. He touched the window glass. Consumption took her that spring, but she'd been dying since the day she arrived. Dying of disappointment. "So, you decided to what trick the next one." He turned to face her. "I decided to find someone who'd choose the man, not the money. Someone who'd take a chance on a stranger rather than let her family suffer. Someone who could see past appearances. You don't know me. I know enough." He walked past her toward the door. "You sat in that courthouse, mending a hymnal while your world fell apart. You didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't make a scene, it just kept working, kept your dignity. You were watching me. I was watching everyone. You were the only one worth seeing." He left her standing there among the books. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway a moment later. "Your room, ma'am." Martha followed her down the hall. Another door, this one painted white. Inside, a bedroom that made her chest tight. Four-poster bed with a quilt that looked handmade but perfect. Washstand with pitcher and bowl, both decorated with painted roses. A wardrobe, empty and waiting. A chair by the window with a footstool, and the window itself, looking out over the valley, the mountains beyond going purple in the dusk. "Dinner is at 7. Mrs. Chen set Martha's carpet bag on a bench at the foot of the bed. "Would you like help unpacking?" "No, thank you." Alone. Martha sat on the bed. The mattress gave under her weight feathers, not straw. She pulled out her mother's wedding dress, altered with the calico panels. It looked even shabbier in this room. Through the window, she could see Josiah walking toward the barn. One of the ranch hands joined him, talking, gesturing at something. Josiah listened, nodded, said something that made the other man laugh. A knock at the door. "Come in." Mrs. Chen entered with an armload of fabric. "Mr. Kincaid thought you might need these." Dresses. 3 of them. Simple, yes, but new, store-bought. 1 brown wool, 1 blue cotton, 1 green silk. "When did he—" "Last week. Ma'am had me guess the sizing." The older woman's face stayed carefully neutral. "I hope they'll do. Last week, before the courthouse, before the proposal." Martha touched the green silk, soft as water, under her fingers. He'd been planning this, watching her, preparing for her, setting his trap with books and silence and dresses that might fit. But why her? In all that courthouse, all that town, why had Josiah Kincaid looked at fat Martha Brennan and decided she was worth 600 books and 20 windows and a bed made with feathers? Martha woke to the sound of wood being split steady rhythm, axe through pine. The bed still held warmth where she'd been. Light came gray through curtains she didn't remember drawing. The green silk dress hung on the wardrobe door. She'd tried it on last night after dinner at a table set for 2. Josiah at one end, her at the other, 6 feet of polished wood between them, whilst Mrs. Chen served roast beef that melted on the tongue. The dress fit, not perfect, but close enough that letting out 2 seams would make it right. She put on her own dress, the brown wool she'd worn to town last month. Her fingers fumbled the buttons. Married one day, and she still didn't know what was expected. What did the wife of a man like Josiah Kincaid do with her mornings downstairs? The house smelled of coffee and baking bread. She followed the scent to the kitchen. Mrs. Chen stood at the stove, stirring something in a pot. She turned when Martha entered. "Good morning." "Ma'am, breakfast? I can—" Martha stopped. This wasn't her mother's kitchen, where she'd cooked every meal since she was 12. "Yes, thank you. Mr. Kincaid takes his in the library, 7 sharp, every day, but you can eat wherever you prefer." Martha watched the older woman move around the kitchen, efficient, practiced. Each item had its place. Bowls nested by size, knives in a block, spices in labeled tins on a shelf. "How long have you worked here?" 8 years, ma'am. Since Mrs. Catherine, since the first wife." Martha wanted to ask more, but Mrs. Chen's face had gone carefully blank, the same expression she'd worn when bringing the dresses. "Mr. Kincaid said you'd want to see the household accounts." Mrs. Chen pulled a ledger from a shelf, set it on the kitchen table. "He keeps his business books, but these are for the house." Martha opened it. Neat columns of numbers. Purchases of flour, sugar, coffee, wages for Mrs. Chen, the 2 ranch hands, Tom and Samuel. She'd learned their names at dinner. Orders from Denver for goods they couldn't get locally. "He said to find me at the stove or with books." Mrs. Chen's mouth might have twitched toward a smile. Seems he was right. Martha ran her finger down the columns. The coffee alone cost more per month than her family spent on food, real coffee, not chicory or barley or any of the substitutes she'd grown up with. The pantry. Martha stood. May I? It's your house, ma'am. Her house. The words sat strange in her ears. The pantry was deep and cool, shelves floor to ceiling, preserved peaches, tomatoes, green beans, sacks of flour and sugar and cornmeal, smoked hams hanging from the rafters. It was organized, yes, but by type, all preserves together, all dry goods together. Martha started pulling jars down, reading dates. August peaches next to September, last year's beans beside this year's, in winter. You'd want the oldest first, but you'd have to search for them. She began rearranging. September beans here, August there, peaches by date, oldest to the front, tomatoes the same way. Her hands knew this work, the weight of full jars, the careful stacking. You're reorganizing. Mrs. Chen stood in the doorway. By season and date. Use the oldest first. Easier to see what needs replacing. Mrs. Chen watched her work. Mrs. Catherine never came in here. Martha set down a jar of pickled beets. What did she do? Waited. For what? To leave. Martha turned a jar so its label faced out. Each one had the same neat writing Mrs. Chen's hand. Did she try once? Made it as far as the pass before the snow started. Mr. Kincaid brought her back. She stayed in her room after that, reading, writing letters that never got sent. How long was she here? 10 months? 3 days? So specific, like someone had been counting. Martha went back to arranging jars. Was she beautiful? Like winter? Mrs. Chen's voice was soft, all sharp edges and cold light, the same words Josiah had used. Martha wondered if they'd talked about her. The first wife compared notes on her beauty and her misery. Mr. Kincaid's in the library. Mrs. Chen turned to go. If you're finished here. Martha looked at the reorganized shelves. It would do for now. She wiped her hands on her apron, followed Mrs. Chen through the house. The library door stood half open. Lamplight spilled out despite the morning sun. The room faced north, stayed dim even in daylight. She knocked on the doorframe. Come. Josiah sat at the desk, ledgers spread before him. He wore spectacles, wire-rimmed, perched halfway down his nose. His finger moved along a column of numbers, pen in his other hand, making notes on a separate paper. He looked up, and for a moment seemed startled to see her. The spectacles caught the light, made his eyes unreadable. Martha! He took the spectacles off, set them on the ledger. Did you sleep well? Yes. The room's comfortable. Yes. They looked at each other across the length of the library. 600 books watched from their shelves. What are you working on? She came closer, close enough to see the ledgers properly. Accounts. He put the spectacles back on, looking down at the papers. Timber contracts, mineral rights, railroad investments. The numbers had more zeros than she'd expected. Column after column of them. Chicago Pacific Railroad. She read from one ledger. That's part owner, small part, but enough. He turned a page. The timber rights are more valuable. As the railroad expands, they need ties, bridges, station buildings, so you supply them. I own the land they harvest from. Others do the cutting. Martha studied the entries. Each one dated, noted, reference to other pages, a web of connections, investments, returns. This wasn't ranch money, this was something else entirely. Your father. She kept her voice neutral. Did he start this? My father was a drunk who died in a bar fight when I was 15. Josiah didn't look up from the ledger. I started with one timber claim and a handshake deal. How? Now he did look up, spectacles sliding down again. I listened, When other men were talking, I listened, learned which claims were worthless and which had potential, bought the ones others thought were too remote. Then the railroad came through. Lucky, not luck. Research. I read the survey reports, knew where they'd have to build. He turned another page. The ranch came later. Somewhere to live that wasn't a boarding house or a tent. Martha moved around the desk, looking at the books behind him. Law books, survey reports, railroad maps. You could live anywhere to Denver, San Francisco. Why here? Because here, no one asks questions. No one comes calling with business proposals or marriageable daughters. He paused. Usually, but they did, with daughters. 3 times. Denver families who'd heard about the crazy hermit with money sent their girls up here like sacrificial lambs. His pen scratched across the paper. 2 of them cried the entire visit. The 3rd tried to seduce me before her father finished his coffee. Martha thought of those girls, dressed in their best, bumping up the mountain road, seeing this house, these rooms, seeing Josiah and thinking they'd won something. So you decided to find your own wife, on your own terms. I decided to find someone who wouldn't cry or scheme, someone practical, someone fat who no one else wanted. His pen stopped. He set it down carefully, took off the spectacles, looked at her directly. Someone who kept working while her world collapsed, someone who took the deal without hysterics or manipulation, someone who looked at an impossible situation and found a way through it. You don't know if I'll be any different than they were. You reorganized the pantry? She blinked. How did you? Mrs. Chen told me. By season and date, oldest to the front. He picked up his pen again. Catherine never even went in the kitchen. That doesn't mean. It means you see work that needs doing and you do it, without being asked, without making a fuss about it. He dipped the pen into ink. That's worth more than beauty. Martha watched him write numbers in neat columns, references in margins. His hands were steady. Sure, ranch hands with calluses, but holding the pen like someone who'd been doing accounts for years. What do you need from me? The question came out blunt, but she needed to know. He didn't answer right away, finished the line he was writing, set the pen in its holder, looked up at her. Run the house. Mrs. Chen's getting older, needs help. Keep the accounts for household expenses. Host occasional visitors when business requires it. He paused. Be here. That's all. That's everything. She thought of Catherine, beautiful Catherine, dying of disappointment in these perfect rooms, writing letters that never got sent, counting days, 10 months, 3 days. I won't share your bed. The words came out fast, hot. I didn't ask you to. His voice stayed level. Your room is yours. This arrangement is practical, not romantic. Then why marriage? You could have hired, because hired help leaves? Wives don't. He picked up the pen again. Usually? That hung between them, Catherine trying to leave, making it to the pass before snow turned her back. Martha wondered if she'd tried again, if the consumption hadn't taken her. Would spring have seen her gone? The ladies from Denver? Josiah's voice cut through her thoughts. They'll come calling soon. Word travels even up here. What ladies? The ones who wanted this house for their daughters. Or themselves. In Mrs. Worthington's case, she's been widowed twice, both times profitably. What do they want? To see who I married instead of them. To find a weakness. To fix what they see as a mistake. Martha thought of the women in town, their whispers and pointing. These would be worse, richer, sharper, with more to lose. When, soon, days, maybe. He turned to look at her. They'll try to drive you off, make you feel small, make you run. I don't run. No. Something shifted in his expression. "I don't think you do." He went back to his ledgers. Martha stood there, watching him work, understanding finally what she'd married. Not a ranch hand playing at being rich, not even a rich man playing at being poor. Something else, a man who'd built his own kingdom in these mountains and now needed someone to help him hold it. The door opened. Mrs. Chen entered with a tray, coffee, 2 cups. "Visitors coming up the road," she said, setting the tray down. 3 carriages. Josiah's pen stopped. He looked at Martha. "Days? Maybe," Martha said dryly. "Or minutes." He almost smiled. "Will you receive them?" Martha thought of her altered wedding dress upstairs, the green silk that needed letting out, her rough hands and plain face. Then she looked at the ledgers, the columns of numbers, the kingdom built from timber and rails. "Mrs. Chen," she said, not looking away from Josiah, "set out the good china, all of it." The carriages were getting closer. She could hear them now. Wheels on gravel, horses breathing hard from the climb. They'd come to see the fat wife, the nobody who'd stolen their prize. Let them come. The Limoges china made small sounds as Mrs. Chen arranged it, cup against saucer, saucer against tray. 22 pieces, Martha counted, the full set. Through the parlor window, she watched the carriages stop. 3 women descended from the first carriage, their bustles catching on the doorframe. The second carriage discharged 2 more. The third held only a driver. But luggage was being unloaded. They'd come prepared to stay. "Should I change?" Martha looked down at her brown wool, ordinary and worn. "No." Josiah stood by the fireplace, still in his work clothes. Let them see what they came to see. The knock came 3 raps, decisive. Mrs. Chen moved to answer it, but Martha touched her arm. "I'll go." She opened the door to 5 women arranged on the porch like a tableau. The one in front, 50 perhaps. Steel gray hair swept up under a hat with peacock feathers, smiled with her mouth, but not her eyes. "You must be the new Mrs. Kincaid." Her voice carried the kind of confidence that came from never being contradicted. "I'm Mrs. Worthington. These are my dear friends, Mrs. Ashford, Mrs. Crane, Miss Pemberton, and Miss Davies." Martha stepped aside. "Please come in." They swept past her, skirts rustling, leaving trails of French perfume. Their eyes moved over everything, the hall tree, the staircase, the paintings, calculating. In the parlor, they arranged themselves without invitation. Mrs. Worthington took the best chair nearest the fire. The others flanked her like soldiers. "We were so shocked to hear Josiah had married." Mrs. Worthington pulled off her gloves, finger by finger, without telling anyone, without a proper wedding. There was a wedding. Yet Martha remained standing, legal and binding, of course. Mrs. Ashford, younger, blonde, nervous energy, leaned forward, but so sudden. "We worry he might have been pressured." Martha let that sit in the air. The clock on the mantel ticked 8 times. "Tea!" She moved to the door. "Mrs. Chen." The older woman entered with the tray, set it on the low table. The china caught the light blue and white, painted it with scenes of ships and harbors, export porcelain, the kind that came from China on clipper ships. Martha poured. Her hand stayed steady even with 5 pairs of eyes watching. She'd learned tea service from her grandmother, who'd learned it from hers. The pot tilted just so, the stream of liquid amber and smooth, no drips, sugar. She held the tongs poised over Mrs. Worthington's cup, 2 lumps. The older woman's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd expected fumbling, splashing, awkwardness. Martha served each woman in turn, remembering preferences after being told once. Miss Davies took milk. Mrs. Crane wanted lemon, small things, but she filed them away. "You're from the valley." Miss Pemberton made it sound like an affliction. She was the youngest, maybe 20, with the kind of prettiness that wouldn't last past 30. Yes, your family farms, I believe, they did. Mrs. Worthington pounced on the past tense. The bank foreclosed 3 days ago. Silence. They hadn't expected honesty. How fortunate, Miss Ashford's smile could have curdled milk, that Mr. Kincaid happened to be there. Yes, Martha sipped her tea. Fortunate. Josiah entered then, and the atmosphere in the room shifted. All 5 women turned toward him like flowers toward sun. Miss Pemberton actually stood halfway up before catching herself. Ladies! He nodded, but didn't sit. I trust my wife is taking care of you. My wife. The words had weight the way he said them. Possession and protection both. She's been adequate. Mrs. Worthington's pause said, everything. Mrs. Kincaid reorganized the entire pantry this morning. Josiah moved to stand behind Martha's chair, not touching, but close. By season and date, increased efficiency by 30%, I'd estimate. Mrs. Crane tittered. How? Domestic. How practical. Josiah's voice carried an edge. The ranch requires someone who sees problems and solves them, not someone who just looks decorative. The reference to decoration made Miss Pemberton flush. She'd worn pink today, chosen to complement her complexion. Speaking of the ranch, Mrs. Worthington set down her cup. We heard about the new timber contracts, the Chicago Pacific expansion. So that was it. Martha watched understanding cross Josiah's face. News travels. His tone went flat. Mr. Worthington, my late husband, had interests in the railroad. I still maintain them. She smiled at Josiah, ignoring Martha entirely. Perhaps we could discuss. I don't discuss business in my parlor. Of course not. Mrs. Worthington turned to Martha. Men and their business. We women understand the burden of managing their success. Tell me, Mrs. Kincaid, how are you finding the elevation? The pause before elevation made it clear she meant something else. Social elevation. Above your station. The air's thinner. Martha set down her cup. But I've always had strong lungs, and you'll need them. Mrs. Ashford's laugh tinkled false. The social season in Denver can be quite demanding. So many obligations. Dinners, balls, charity events. I hadn't realized we'd be attending. Martha glanced at Josiah. My husband prefers the quiet. But surely you'll convince him. Miss Davies spoke for the first time, voice high and sweet. A wife's influence can be so powerful, the right wife. Anyway, Martha stood. The other women had to look up at her now. She'd always been tall, and standing made them crane their necks. You must be tired from your journey. She moved toward the window, making them turn to follow her. 3 hours from Denver, longer, with the roads muddy from last week's rain. How did you? Mrs. Crane started. The wheels? Martha gestured to the carriages outside. Clay mud on them, the kind you only get near Willow Creek. That's halfway from Denver, and clay takes a week to dry after rain. She turned back to them. My father taught me to read dirt. Useful skill for a farmer. Mrs. Worthington's jaw tightened. Useful for a farmer, perhaps. And for anyone who needs to know where people have been or where they're going. Martha smiled pleasantly. For instance, I can tell Mrs. Ashford visited the bank this morning. Red dust on her hem. They're reconstructing the facade. Aren't they? And Mrs. Crane stopped at the telegram office? That particular yellow paper sticking out of your reticule? Only Western Union uses that shade." Both women shifted. Mrs. Ashford pulled her skirts to cover her hem. Mrs. Crane pushed the telegram deeper into her bag. "Observant." Mrs. Worthington's voice could have frozen water. "Necessary." Martha moved back to her chair, but didn't sit. When people come to visit unexpectedly, it helps to understand why. "We came to welcome you." Miss Pemberton's protest sounded thin. "Did you?" Martha looked at each of them in turn. "Or did you come to see if the stories were true? If Josiah Kincaid really married a nobody, if you could fix what you see as a terrible mistake, how dare?" Mrs. Worthington started to rise. "Please sit." Martha's voice stayed level. "Your tea will get cold." The older woman sank back down, surprised into obedience. "Here's what I know." Martha picked up the teapot, began refilling cups whether they needed it or not. The action gave her something to do with her hands, kept them all watching her. "Mrs. Worthington, you need investors for your late husband's failing mine. The Chicago Pacific contract would save you, Mrs. Ashford. Your husband gambled away your fortune. You're selling jewelry to keep up appearances. That's why you visited the bank to pawn your grandmother's brooch." Mrs. Ashford's hand went to her throat where a brooch should have been, but wasn't. "Mrs. Crane, your son needs a position. The telegram was from him, begging for help. Again." Martha poured tea into Miss Davies' cup. "Miss Davies, your family's shipping business is failing now that the railroads have taken over transport. And Miss Pemberton—" She paused at the youngest woman's cup. Miss Pemberton just wanted to see the house she thought would be hers. Silence. The clock ticked. A log shifted in the fireplace. "You're guessing." Mrs. Worthington's voice had lost its certainty. "I'm observing." Martha set down the teapot. "The same way I observed my husband in that courthouse. Saw him watching everyone, evaluating, deciding. He chose me not despite what I am, but because of it." She moved to stand beside Josiah's chair, still not touching, but aligned. "You came here thinking you'd find a mistake, a fat farm girl who tricked a rich man. Someone you could drive away with a few clever insults and some social pressure. We came to help." Mrs. Worthington's protest sounded hollow. "No, you came to reclaim what you think is yours. This house, this man, this money." Martha looked at each of them. "But it was never yours, and I'm not going anywhere." Mrs. Worthington stood abruptly. The others followed like puppets on strings. "We should go." She pulled on her gloves with sharp motions. "The road down can be treacherous in the afternoon." "Yes." Martha moved toward the door, making them follow. "It can be." At the entrance, Mrs. Worthington turned back. Her eyes were hard as granite. "This isn't over." "I know." Martha opened the door wider. "Drive carefully. The drop-off at Devil's Bend has no fence. Easy to misjudge." The threat in her words was subtle, but clear. "I know these roads. This is my territory now." The women left in a rustle of silk and wounded pride. Martha stood in the doorway, watching the carriages navigate the turn. Mrs. Chen came up beside her. "They'll be back." The older woman's voice was quiet. "Yes." Martha closed the door, "but different next time. Smarter." She turned to find Josiah watching her from the parlor doorway. "You knew about Mrs. Ashford's brooch." "Not a question." "Lucky guess. Rich women selling jewelry always touch their throats. Checking what's still there, and the rest? Observation, logic. The same skills you used to build your empire." He studied her for a long moment. "They'll destroy you if they can. They'll try." "You're not afraid?" Martha thought of the 5 women, their perfect clothes and perfect manners and perfect hatred. "I've been destroyed before. Called names, laughed at, dismissed. They can't do anything to me that hasn't already been done. This will be worse. How? Josiah moved closer, close enough that she could smell the tobacco and leather on him. Because now you have something to lose. Before she could ask what he meant, Tom appeared in the doorway, hat in hand, face tight with worry. Mr. Kincaid, you need to see this. Someone's cut the fence lines. All of them. Josiah pulled on his coat, was out the door before Tom finished talking. Martha followed, her house shoes slipping on the gravel. The afternoon sun caught the cut wire's bright copper ends twisted and sharp. How many? Josiah crouched beside a fence post, running his fingers along the severed wire. Every section we've checked. Tom's Adam's apple bobbed. North pasture, East ridge, all along the creek. Samuel came riding up, horse lathered with sweat. South boundary, too. Clean cuts, wire cutters, not saw work. Martha looked back at the road where dust still hung from the departed carriages. They couldn't have. They were here. They didn't need to be there. Josiah stood, brushed dirt from his knees. Money does the cutting for them. The cattle, already drifting, found 20 head on Mackenzie's land. Samuel shifted in his saddle. He's holding them. Says it'll cost to get them back. Josiah's jaw worked. How much? $50. Cash. Martha watched her husband's face go still. Not angry. Something colder. Pay him! He turned to Tom. Get every hand we can spare. Fix the priority sections first, creek access, then boundaries. The men left. Josiah stood looking at the cut fence, hands loose at his sides. This is because of me. Martha's throat felt tight. This is because they think they can. He picked up a piece of cut wire, turned it in the fading light. They're testing, seeing how far they can push. They walked back to the house in silence. Mrs. Chen met them at the door with an envelope. This came while you were out. Her face was carefully neutral. No postmark. Martha took it, her name on the front. Mrs. Josiah Kincaid. In elaborate script. The paper was cream, expensive. She broke the seal red wax, no insignia. A single sheet, a drawing, her stomach twisted. The caricature was skillfully done. A grotesque version of herself. Rolls of fat spilling over a too small dress, mouth open and drooling, reaching greedily for money bags while Josiah stood trapped in chains behind her. Let me see. Josiah reached for it. No. She folded it carefully, put it in her pocket. It's nothing. His hand dropped. Martha, I need to check the stores. See what we'll need with extra hands for fence work. She left him standing there, walked through the house to the kitchen. Her hand shook as she opened the store ledger. Numbers swam on the page. Mrs. Chen appeared beside her. There have been 3 others. What? The older woman reached behind a flour tin, pulled out 3 more envelopes. Same paper, same seal. Martha opened them one by one, each drawing worse than the last. Her eating from a trough, her crushing Josiah under her weight, her face on a pig's body. Why didn't you? I thought to spare you. Mrs. Chen's voice was soft. But you are stronger than I believed. Martha spread the drawings on the table, studied them like she'd study a ledger, looking for patterns. Same artist, same paper. She held one up to the light. Watermark. Expensive stock. Only 2 shops in Denver sell it. You would track them down. I would know my enemy. Martha folded each drawing precisely. Where else? Mrs. Chen hesitated. Then Tom was offered work elsewhere. Double wages. Samuel, too. Who made the offer? Man named Peterson. Works for Mrs. Worthington sometimes. Martha pulled the household ledger closer, started making notes. What else? The telegraph operator in town, Sam's boy. He's been copying our messages. Sending them to Denver. You know this how. His mother buys eggs from me. She worries about the money he's suddenly spending. Martha kept writing. Names, connections, amounts, a map of the attack taking shape. Ma'am, Mrs. Chen touched her arm. There's more. Martha looked up at the older woman's face, saw something there that made her chest tight. They're questioning the marriage, saying it wasn't legal, that Mr. Kincaid was coerced. Let them question. They have a judge who'll listen, Judge Harriman in Denver, Mrs. Worthington's cousin. Martha set down her pen. A cousin judge could cause real trouble. Void marriages had been declared for less. Footsteps in the hall. Josiah entered, carrying a wooden box. From town? He set it on the table. General store owner asked me to bring it up. Said it was ordered for the house. Martha looked at the label. Mrs. Josiah Kincaid. No return address. She opened it carefully. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, a dress. Black silk, the kind worn for mourning. And underneath it, a card. For your upcoming loss. Josiah picked up the card, read it, set it down. His face showed nothing, but Martha saw the muscle jump in his jaw. Pack your things. His voice was flat. What? I'll have Tom drive you to the train tomorrow. You can go anywhere. San Francisco, St. Louis. I'll provide funds. No! He turned to look at her. This will get worse. I know. They'll destroy your reputation, make your life miserable. My reputation was destroyed years ago when I got fat. My life was miserable watching my family lose everything. Martha stood, faced him. I'm not running. Catherine, I'm not Catherine. Silence stretched between them. Mrs. Chen quietly left the room. They want you to send me away. Martha picked up one of the drawings. That's what this is about. Break the marriage. Get access to you again. It's working. No. You sending me away would be it working. She gathered all the papers, drawings, card, threat. You said I had something to lose now. You were right. This house, this place, this chance at a different life. I won't let them take it. Josiah moved around the table, came close enough that she could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. Why? His voice was rough. Why fight for a marriage that isn't real? Because it's mine. The words came out fierce. The first thing in my life that's mine, not my parents', not my sister's, not the town's, mine. He reached out, touched the drawing in her hand. These don't hurt you. Everything hurts me. Being laughed at hurts. Being invisible hurts. Being pitied hurts. She set the drawing down. But this is just ink on paper from people who matter so little they have to hide behind sealed envelopes. What do you want to do? Martha pulled the household ledger closer. Then a clean sheet of paper. Started writing. First, we secure the allies. The ranchers who actually work their land won't side with Denver society. Your contracts with them matter more than social games. She kept writing. Second, we document everything, every threat, every bribe, every cut fence, build a legal case. And third, she looked up at him. We go to Denver. Martha, the governor's ball is in 2 weeks. Everyone will be there, including the governor's wife, who grew up 3 towns over from me in Indiana. She smiled, sharp. Farm girls understand each other. Josiah watched her write names, strategies, connections. You're planning a campaign. I am planning a war. She set down the pen. You said you chose me because I was practical, because I could see problems and solve them. This is a problem. Let me solve it. He picked up the mourning dress, black silk running through his fingers. They sent this as a threat. I know. You could wear it to the ball. Martha looked at him, saw something in his face she hadn't seen before, not quite a smile, more like recognition, turned their threat into armor. She touched the silk. It was good quality, better than anything she owned. That would send a message. It would declare war. "Mr. Kincaid," she met his eyes, "they cut your fences, tried to steal your cattle, attempted to buy your servants, and sent me pictures of myself as a pig. The war's already started." He set down the dress. "Then we'd better win it." "We will." She picked up another envelope that Mrs. Chen had left on the counter. Different paper. Legal weight? What's this? Josiah looked at it, his face changing. "That arrived this morning. I hope to handle it before." Martha opened it. Legal language, dense and formal, but the meaning was clear. They're challenging the marriage license. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. Claiming fraud. "The hearing's in 3 days. Denver courthouse." Martha read through it again, looking for the signature. Found it. "Judge Harriman? Mrs. Worthington's cousin." Yes. She set the letter down, very carefully, next to the mourning dress and the drawings. 3 days. She looked at Josiah. "They're not wasting time. If we don't appear, he'll rule in their favor. Annulment." Martha picked up the pen again, started a new list. "Then we appear, but not alone." "What do you mean?" She smiled, and this time it felt like baring teeth. "How many marriage witnesses do we have?" "2, the courthouse clerk and—" He stopped, understanding. "And Judge Whitman, who just happens to despise Judge Harriman for stealing a case from him last year." Martha kept writing. "Tom's cousin works at the Denver newspaper. Samuel's wife's sister is a secretary at the governor's office. You're mobilizing an army. I'm mobilizing witnesses." She looked up at him. "People who'll swear the marriage was legal, consensual, and binding. People whose word matters." Josiah watched her work. This woman he'd married for practical reasons, who was proving more practical than he'd imagined. "There's something else." His voice carried a warning. Martha set down the pen, looked at him, and knew before he spoke what he was going to say. "Catherine's father, he's in Denver, and he's agreed to testify." The room felt suddenly cold. "Testify to what?" "That I have a history of coercing women into marriage." Martha stood in her bedroom staring at the 3 dresses laid across the bed, the mourning black they'd sent as a threat, the green silk Josiah had bought before he knew her, and now this emerald satin that Mrs. Chen had been altering in secret for 2 days. The waist needed taking in. Mrs. Chen knelt beside her, checking the hem one more time. "You've lost weight this week." Martha hadn't noticed, too busy with ledgers and letters, witnesses and strategies. A knock at the door. Mrs. Kincaid, not Mrs. Chen's voice, younger, uncertain. "Come in." 3 women entered. Martha recognized 2 Mrs. Baker from the neighboring ranch, Mrs. Stewart, whose husband supplied timber to Josiah. The third was younger, barely 20. "We heard about tonight." Mrs. Baker set down a carpetbag. "Thought you might need help." "Why would you?" "Because we know what those Denver witches are." Mrs. Stewart's mouth was a hard line. "Tried to ruin my daughter's engagement last year. Said she wasn't quality enough for their circle." The younger woman stepped forward. "I'm Alice Morrison. My father owns the feed store. Those women have been bleeding him dry with delayed payments for years." Martha looked at these 3 women, unexpected allies in plain dresses and practical boots. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything." Mrs. Baker opened her bag, pulled out a corset. "But let us help you get ready." They worked on her like she was a project. Alice did her hair, fingers quick and sure, pinning and coiling until Martha's usually flat brown hair had volume and shine. Mrs. Stewart applied rouge and powder with a light hand, just enough to catch the gaslight. Mrs. Baker buttoned the endless row of buttons down the back of the emerald dress. The bedroom door opened. Josiah stopped in the doorway, fully dressed in evening clothes Martha hadn't known he owned. Black tailcoat, white shirt so crisp it could cut. Gray silk vest. The women stepped back. Martha turned to face him. His eyes moved over her, slow, taking in the transformation. The dress fit perfectly now, tight through the bodice, but not straining. The skirt falling in clean lines despite her width. The emerald color made her skin look cream instead of sallow. "You'll do?" His voice was rough. "So will you." The women gathered their things, left them standing there. "The carriage is ready." Josiah held out a box. This was Catherine's. "You should wear it." Inside, a necklace, emeralds in gold, simple but expensive. Martha lifted it out, felt the weight. Why her jewelry? "Because they'll recognize it." He moved behind her, took the necklace, fastened it around her throat. His fingers brushed her neck. "Let them see you wearing what she never could." The carriage ride to Denver took 2 hours. Martha sat across from Josiah, not beside him, watching the landscape change from mountain to prairie to town. Her stomach clenched tighter with each mile. "You don't have to do this." His voice cut through the dark. "Yes, I do. The annulment hearing is tomorrow. If tonight goes badly, it won't." He leaned forward. "Martha, these people have been playing these games since birth. You've had a week to learn." "I've had 28 years of being mocked to learn." She met his eyes in the dim carriage. "That's its own education." Denver's lights appeared, gas lamps lining streets she'd only seen once before. The governor's mansion sat on a hill, every window blazing. Carriages lined the drive, music drifted out orchestra, not mountain fiddles. Their carriage stopped. A footman opened the door. Josiah stepped out first, turned, offered his hand. Martha took it, descended, heard conversations pause. People on the mansion steps turned to look. She recognized faces from the newspaper society pages, all of them staring. "Steady!" Josiah's voice was low. "Just for her." They climbed the steps. At the door, a butler took their invitation, read it twice, looked up at them with barely concealed surprise. "Mr. and Mrs. Josiah Kincaid." They entered the ballroom. The music didn't stop. The orchestra was too professional for that, but conversations died in waves. 500 people, maybe more, all turning to look at the woman who'd married above herself. Martha made herself count the chandeliers. 8, each one holding 50 candles, 400 points of light. Josiah, a man's voice, hearty and political. Governor Hayes himself, approaching with his wife. "Glad you could make it, Governor." Josiah shook his hand. "May I present my wife, Martha?" The governor's wife stepped forward, Mary Hayes, née Mary Olson from Fort Wayne, 3 towns over from where Martha grew up, just as she'd remembered. "Mrs. Kincaid." Mary Hayes took both of Martha's hands in hers. "How wonderful to meet another Indiana girl." The gesture was deliberate, public, impossible to misinterpret. The governor's wife had just claimed Martha as one of her own. "Mrs. Hayes," Martha squeezed back, grateful. "The mansion is beautiful. Too many candles. I keep telling Robert we'll burn the place down." Mary Hayes kept hold of one of Martha's hands, turned to face the room. "Come. Let me introduce you to people actually worth knowing." They moved through the crowd, Mary Hayes's endorsement clearing a path. She introduced Martha to the railroad commissioner's wife, the territorial secretary's daughter, the federal judge's sister. Each introduction careful, strategic, building a wall of acceptance. Then the crowd parted, and Mrs. Worthington stood there. She wore burgundy silk that must have cost a fortune, diamonds at her throat, in her ears, on her wrists. Her smile could have frozen flame. "Mrs. Kincaid, how brave, attending tonight." The words carried across the suddenly quiet ballroom. People turned. Sensing blood, "Mrs. Worthington," Martha kept her voice level. "How kind of you to notice. That's quite a necklace." Mrs. Worthington's eyes fixed on the emeralds. "I remember when poor Catherine wore it, of course. It suited her delicate frame better." Whispers rippled out. Everyone knew about Catherine, the first wife who died trying to leave. Yes, she was delicate. As Martha touched the necklace, in every way, Mrs. Worthington's smile sharpened. "Some of us are simply born to wear jewels. Others, well, they do their best." "Speaking of jewelry," Martha turned slightly, addressing the crowd as much as Mrs. Worthington. "Is your husband here? I heard several creditors were looking for him, something about gambling debts." Mrs. Worthington went white under her powder. "My husband is deceased." "Your third husband?" "Yes, but your second, Mr. Worthington, the one whose debts you're still paying." Martha smiled pleasantly. "Or trying to pay. Is that why you needed my husband's railroad contract so badly, to cover what Mr. Worthington lost at the Cheeseman's game last month?" The silence was complete now. Even the orchestra had stopped. "How dare you! $2,000. Wasn't it due next week?" Martha stepped closer. "That's why you cut our fences. Petty revenge for losing access to the one man whose money could save you." "You're lying." "Am I?" Martha reached into her reticule, pulled out a paper. "This is a copy of the debt notice, public record at the courthouse. Anyone can see it." Mrs. Worthington's hand shot out, tried to grab the paper. Martha stepped back, let the woman stumble slightly. Laughter, soft, quickly suppressed. But there, "You fat—" Mrs. Worthington caught herself, but too late. "Yes," Martha stood straighter, "I'm fat and common and married to a man you wanted, and there's nothing you can do about it." The governor's wife appeared at Martha's elbow. "Mrs. Kincaid, you promised me the next dance." It was a rescue and a statement. Mary Hayes was publicly choosing sides, but Mrs. Worthington wasn't finished. "There's the annulment hearing tomorrow. Judge Harriman will see through this charade." "You mean your cousin?" Martha turned back. "The same judge who dismissed 3 cases against your late husband's company. The one you dine with every Sunday." Murmurs through the crowd. The connection laid bare. "Catherine's father will testify. Tell everyone how Josiah coerced." "Actually, he won't." A new voice, male, older, tired. The crowd parted again. Mr. Hartwell, Catherine's father, stood at the ballroom entrance. He looked older than his 60 years, worn down by something more than time. "Robert," Miss Worthington's voice cracked, "you promised—" "I promised to tell the truth." He walked forward, each step deliberate. "The truth is my daughter was dying when she married Josiah. Consumption, though we hid it. She had maybe a year left. The marriage gave her comfort. A beautiful place to spend her last months." Complete silence. "She wasn't coerced. She was grateful. The letter she wrote me said so." He looked at Martha. "I came tonight to say that publicly, before the hearing, so there's no confusion." Mrs. Worthington's face contorted. "You're lying. She told me." "She told you what you wanted to hear, because you promised to help her leave." Mr. Hartwell's voice went hard. "You filled her head with escape plans, made her believe she could travel to Europe for a cure. You made her last months miserable with false hope." He turned to Josiah. "I should have said this years ago. I'm sorry." Then he walked out, leaving devastation behind. The orchestra started playing a waltz. Josiah stepped forward, offered Martha his arm. "Dance with me." It wasn't a question. Martha took his arm, let him lead her onto the floor. Other couples joined them, giving them space, but not too much. The statement was clear. The Kincaids were accepted. Josiah's hand settled at her waist, her hand in his. They moved together, and Martha found he was a good dancer. Sure, steady, easy to follow. You planned that. His voice was low just for her, Hartwell appearing. I wrote to him, told him the truth about his daughter's letters. Mrs. Chen had saved them. Why would she? Because she loved Catherine too, wanted someone to know the real story. They turned, Martha's skirt swirling. The emerald necklace caught the light, threw green fire. They're all watching, she said. Let them. Tomorrow's hearing will be interesting. Josiah spun her, brought her back. You've destroyed their main witness and exposed the judge's bias. Publicly. Mrs. Worthington won't give up. No, but tonight you won. The music was ending. As Josiah led her off the floor, Martha saw Mrs. Worthington leaving, her allies trailing behind, defeated for now. But at the door, the older woman turned back, met Martha's eyes across the ballroom, mouthed something. Martha read her lips clearly. This isn't over. Then she saw what Mrs. Worthington was holding, a telegram just delivered, and the smile on her face as she read it. The carriage wheels rolled steady through the night. Martha had taken off the emerald necklace, held it in her lap, running her thumb over the stones. Josiah sat across from her, his white shirt visible in the darkness. Tie loosened. Neither spoke for the first hour. The city fell away. Prairie grass bent silver under the moon, then foothills, then the mountain road beginning its climb. The telegram! Martha's voice sounded loud after the silence. Mrs. Worthington received something. I saw. She looked pleased. Yes. Martha set the necklace in its box, closed the lid. What could she? It doesn't matter. Josiah shifted, his knee brushing hers in the small space. Not tonight. The carriage tilted as they started up the switchbacks. Martha gripped the seat, same road she'd traveled days ago as a stranger. But the darkness outside looked different now, familiar. You were good tonight. His voice was quiet. Better than good. I was angry. You were magnificent. The word hung between them. Martha looked at his face, half in shadow, half lit by moonlight through the window. Catherine never fought back. Catherine never had to. She was beautiful. That was enough. Until it wasn't. Yes. The carriage slowed. Martha recognized the spot, the ridge where she'd first looked back at her old life, shrinking below. Josiah knocked on the roof. The driver stopped. Why are we? Josiah opened the door, stepped out, offered his hand. She took it, let him help her down. The night air bit cold through her evening dress. He led her to the edge where the valley spread below it. Their valley now, lit by moon and stars. The house sat in the center, windows dark except for one Mrs. Chen keeping watch. Look, he pointed west. Storm coming. And clouds massed over the far peaks, lightning flickering inside them. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain. We should go. Martha pulled her shawl tighter. Wait. Josiah's hand caught hers, not helping her walk, not formal, just holding. Before we go back, before we're Mr. and Mrs. Kincaid of the big house, just wait. They stood there, hand in hand, watching the storm approach. Lightning showed the valley in flashes, white fence posts, the creek, the house that had seemed impossible a week ago. I need to tell you something. His thumb moved across her knuckles. About Catherine's death. Martha stayed quiet. She tried to leave in winter. I brought her back. She hated me for it. Wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat. Mrs. Chen had to force broth into her. His grip tightened. The consumption was already in her lungs, but I think she willed it to take her faster. Died hating me. Hating this place. That wasn't your fault. Wasn't it I married a woman who didn't want to be here? kept her here against her will. You gave her a choice, same as you gave me." He turned to look at her. "Did I really? Your family would have lost everything, and I could have let them." Martha faced him fully. "I could have walked away, found work in another town, left them to their fate. I chose to stay, chose to take your offer. That's the difference." The first drops of rain hit her face. "We should go," he said, but didn't move. "Yes." They stood there another moment, rain starting to fall harder, before he led her back to the carriage. This time, he sat beside her, not across, his shoulders solid against hers. As the carriage continued up the mountain, they reached the house as the storm broke fully. Tom came running with an umbrella, but they were soaked between carriage and door. Mrs. Chen waited in the entrance with towels and stern looks. "There's a telegram." She handed it to Josiah. "From Denver." He read it, his face going still, handed it to Martha. "Judge Harriman recused. Hearing moved to federal court. Judge Marion Bell presiding." Martha looked up. "Judge Bell, isn't he the one who hates corruption more than breathing?" Josiah almost smiled. "The governor must have intervened because of tonight, because you exposed the game publicly, made it impossible to ignore." Mrs. Chen took their wet things. "There's brandy in the library. Fire's lit." They went to the library, Martha still shivering despite the fire. Josiah poured 2 glasses, handed her one. The brandy burned warm down her throat. "The annulment hearings tomorrow." Martha sat in the chair by the fire. "We still have to appeal. But now it's fair. Judge Bell won't be bought or influenced." "Will Mr. Hartwell still testify?" "After tonight, he'll say exactly what he said at the ball." Josiah sat in the opposite chair. The truth? They drank in silence. The storm rattled windows, threw rain against glass. The fire popped and settled. "Why me?" Martha asked suddenly. "Really, not the story about dignity in the courthouse. The real reason." Josiah set down his glass, looked at the fire. "You want the truth?" "Yes." "You didn't smile." "What, when they laughed at you and called you names? Threw that rock?" He turned to her. "Everyone smiles when they're hurt in public. They smile to show it doesn't matter. They're above it. They're fine. It's a lie everyone agrees to." Martha waited. "You didn't smile. Didn't pretend it was fine. Just kept working. No performance, no pretense." He picked up his glass again. "I'd been watching that town for weeks, looking for I don't know what, someone real, maybe. Then I saw you refuse to pretend. And I knew what? That you wouldn't pretend here either. Wouldn't smile while hating it. If you were miserable, you'd say so. If you were happy." He shrugged. "That would be real too." Martha stood, walked to the window. Her reflection stared back, hair falling out of its pins, dress wrinkled from rain. "I'm not beautiful. No." The honesty of it hit like cold water. "But you're here." His reflection appeared behind hers in the glass. "Every morning you come down and work. Not because you have to anymore. The marriage is legal. The debt's paid. You could coast. But you reorganize pantries and serve tea to women who hate you and learn my business from ledgers. It needs doing. Yes. And you see that. You see work and do it without being asked, without complaining, without expecting praise. That's not special. It's the rarest thing in the world." She turned to face him. He stood close enough to touch. "What do you want?" "Josiah, really, I want to stop waiting for you to leave." His voice was rough. "I want to stop checking your room each morning to see if you packed in the night. I want to stop wondering when you'll realize you could do better. Better than this house, this land, this money. Better than a man who trapped you into marriage, who used your family's desperation. Martha reached up, touched his face. His cheek was rough under her palm, needed shaving. You didn't trap me. You offered me a door. I walked through it. And now I want to stay, not because I have to, because this is my home. These are my books, my pantry, my household. She dropped her hand. My husband. The word hung between them. Start over, he asked quietly. Start real. Yes. He leaned down, kissed her. Not passionate, not desperate, careful, like he was learning the shape of her mouth. She kissed him back, the same way, careful, curious. When they pulled apart, the storm had passed. The library was quiet except for the dying fire. The hearing's at 9, Martha said. Yes. We should sleep? Yes. Neither moved. Your room or mine? The question surprised her as much as him. Yours is closer? They went upstairs, Martha leading. At her door, she stopped. I don't know how to be a real wife. I don't know how to be a real husband. He touched her hand. We'll learn. A week later, Martha sat at the desk in the library, her desk now. Josiah had moved his papers to make room. Ledgers spread before her, cattle accounts and timber contracts. Her pen moved steady down columns, checking figures. Josiah sat in the chair, by the window, reading. Not business papers, a novel, something he'd never done when Catherine was alive. Mrs. Chen had mentioned. The annulment hearing had lasted 15 minutes. Judge Bell had reviewed the marriage certificate, heard Mr. Hartwell's testimony, dismissed the case. Mrs. Worthington hadn't even appeared, but she'd sent another telegram. Congratulations, for now. Martha had pinned it to the mirror, with the cruel drawings, armor, reminder, promise. The war wasn't over, just paused. The Hendricks cattle contract. Martha held up a paper. They're underpaying by 20%. Always have. And Josiah didn't look up from his book. Old Tom Hendricks claims poverty every year. He bought his wife diamond earbobs last month. Now Josiah did look up. How do you know that Mrs. Chen's cousin works at the Denver jewelry store? I've been building my own network. He smiled a real smile, not the careful ones from before. Of course you have. Martha went back to the ledgers. Her wedding ring, simple gold, properly sensed, now caught the lamplight as she wrote. Not the ring from the courthouse ceremony. A new one, bought the day after the hearing. Josiah wore a matching one. Oh, we got a letter. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. From your family. Martha took it, recognized her mother's writing, opened it carefully. Her father had found work at the mill. Her sisters were helping the minister's wife with sewing. They were surviving. At the bottom, a postscript. We heard about the ball. The whole town's talking. Some say you've forgotten where you came from. I say you've remembered who you are. Martha folded the letter, set it aside, picked up her pen again. Outside, snow had started falling. First snow of the season, covering the valley in white. The fences were all repaired, the cattle safe. The house warm and sealed against winter. Martha? Josiah's voice was quiet. She looked up. Thank you for staying, for fighting, for being real. She set down her pen, went to him, sat on the arm of his chair, something she wouldn't have dared a week ago. He put his arm around her waist, natural as breathing. It's my home, she said simply. Our home. They sat there, watching snow fall on their valley, transforming it into something new and clean. The lamp burned steady, the fire crackled. And Martha Kincaid, who'd been Martha Brennan, who'd been nobody, felt the solid weight of belonging. The war with Mrs. Worthington would continue. There would be other battles, other insults, other attempts to tear them down. Let them come. she was home. 5 winters have passed since that first snow fell on our valley. I write this by the same lamp, at the same desk where Martha first claimed her place in my world. She sits across from me now, reading to our twin daughters born 3 years ago, when everyone said she was too old, too large, too everything except what she is perfect. Mrs. Worthington still sends her threats, though less frequently. Society still whispers, but our home stands strong, filled with the laughter of children who know they are loved, workers who are treated fairly, and books that are actually read. Martha reorganized my entire life the same way she reorganized that pantry with practical wisdom and fierce determination. I searched for a wife to manage my household. I found a partner who remade my heart. This story is a work of historical fiction, inspired by Western frontier narratives, created solely for entertainment purposes. This work does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of discrimination, body shaming, or harmful behavior toward any individual. All characters and events depicted are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The story aims to celebrate resilience, genuine love, and the triumph of character over prejudice.